Hi everyone, I'm Scott McLean, Executive Sales Director at MedPro Systems, and I'd like to welcome you to our very first episode of Powered by Data. This new podcast is a space for real conversations about what's happening across the life sciences industry, from compliance and data management to technology and transformation. In this first episode, I'm joined by Bryan Andrews, our Senior Director of Business Development and Partnerships, Dan Loeffler, Vice President of Customer Experience, and Christine Demetillo, Product Specialist. Together, we'll dig into some big shifts we're seeing right now: CRM migrations, vendor consolidations, and the growing trend of bundled data, and what it all means for data accuracy, compliance, and confidence. We'll also talk about why best-of-breed solutions still matter and how partnerships and integrations make it easier than ever to bring trusted data into any system you use. So whether you're in sales, operations, compliance, or IT, we hope this conversation gives you insight into how leading organizations are adapting to change and building stronger, more data-driven foundations for the future. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Let's start with what everyone's talking about, the CRM migrations. Dan, you've been close to this space for years. What's really behind the wave of movement we're seeing, and how does it tie back to the data challenges companies are trying to solve?
It is really the dominating narrative in the industry right now, because fundamentally Salesforce and Veeva, two of the biggest players in the industry, have kind of a messy divorce. And as a consequence, everybody's having to make a change, right? Whether it's moving away from IQVIA's product, moving away from Veeva, moving to Salesforce, Life Sciences Cloud, et cetera. Everybody has to make a change. And I've been supporting this type of integration, getting data into the CRM for over 10 years. And I think one of the things that customers are consistently hungry for is trying to make data work for them in their workflow, right? Trying to make sense of it. They have a lot of data, a lot of interactions, and what are they trying to do? They're fundamentally trying to get their products to patients. And so, I think we're seeing it a lot from the business standpoint that just, Christine, I know you've seen this, right? We have so many customers wanting to have more partnerships, more integrations, things like that. I don't know what you've seen, just bigger picture, even outside of this CRM shift.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen a lot of people getting away from just thinking about the technology and thinking more with the business strategy instead. So it's more, it's more of like trying to be more efficient, gaining more control over their data as it ties into people kind of rethinking their CRM ecosystems. That also includes looking away from long-term platforms and looking more into like consolidating multiple systems into one, which comes into Salesforce, Life Sciences, and a lot happening with Veeva and their strategy as well too. Bryan, I don't know if you've seen that also from other partnerships as well.
We have, yeah. So it's being labeled a once in a generation shift of everyone having to make a choice and change. Customers are looking to us and to our partners in terms of what we see in the marketplace and what are the advantages for going for one platform or the other. It's an opportunity for companies to think about where they are as a business today, but where they need to be in 5 years, and less about the immediate GUI that everyone's very used to today, but where the company's going to be from an account-based sell. The prominence of cell and gene therapies and other non-traditional products that less blockbusters and more about orphan-focused products. And so the good news is that there's a lot of choices out there in terms of data providers like MedPro, system integrators that we work with, and then a whole host of other ecosystem partners that companies are looking for guidance on as they have a real big decision to make.
A point relevant for a piece of everything you all just brought up is CRMs are changing, right? They do need to be integrated into various other business processes. They need to handle this omni-channel ecosystem, right? We've seen this consolidation before, right? And Dendrite and Cegedim owned the CRM market, late 90s, early 2000s. Cegedim acquired Dendrite in 2007, I believe. Also, coincidentally, timed well with Veeva's birth, right? Who went on to instill CRM dominance at the current stage. And then IMS Health ultimately bought Cegedim in 2014. I think CRM has evolved from I need to record samples, I need to record HCP interactions and capture a couple more things, and I need to get my exponent data or my relevant market indicators integrated now, where now we're looking at these platforms are expected to handle, again, omni-channel, digital, remote, hybrid, integrate with patient support programs, linked to clinical, med affairs. So the vendor that is going to shake out here at the top of the food chain in life sciences has to have breadth of the platform ecosystem, which leads us to two very distinct approaches, right? Salesforce building on a very open, broad ecosystem, and Vault staying in this kind of, to use Bryan's term, walled garden approach. Just thoughts on that? How do we think that's going to go?
Call back to what Bryan had said about the changes in therapies, right? The new products that are coming to market, that are being approved, right? They're not just pills in a bottle most of the time, right? And what this means is that there are new ways that people want to approach or need to approach their business. So really, in my view, and it definitely is something that we at MedPro lean heavily into, this best of breed approach. I'd like to maybe think of it a different way, which is what's best for my business approach, right? You need a platform that's going to be flexible, that's going to give you the kind of the touch points and the ability to leverage your data in a way that is right for your very specific and unique business needs, that can tie your products, your services, your MSLs, your sales teams to practitioners, to the relevant organizations, and ultimately to patients, right? You can't have everything, you can't just treat it as, and I heard this at Dreamforce, they talked about this a lot, you can't just have your CRM as a system of record, right? It has to be a system of action, a system of doing things and connecting people. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, the winner in this is going, even if they want to create some type of walled garden, if they don't have a way to easily break through the walls or get around them, you're not going to have staying power because today's businesses are not the same as yesterday's businesses.
Everyone wants to be the best at everything, like be the perfect vendor for their customers, but ideally that's not the case, that we could support that. But it's important that with best of breed data, we focus on being laser focused for updating important information. We recognize that we're not trying to be a CRM, we're not trying to be an ERP, anything like that, but what we're doing is that we're supplying and helping maintain that accuracy, that consistency. So rather than just fixating on what data might be bundled, it's important to branch out and recognize that you need that data updated. We need different sources. Even from a data type perspective, there are challenges in new providers that are now coming into play. For example, we talked about telehealth data. That's something else we have to consider too. That's now becoming more of a growing area as well. So I've actually had I've had a customer call before where we were finalizing their migration over to SAP S/4HANA, but we realized right before the go live date that their HCO or their organization data was actually off because they weren't intaking the latest information, like the California licenses in 2023. Those were advised to include the facility ID, and they actually weren't maintaining that information. So we had to push like 4,000 records all in one go right before the go live. So that kind of shows, best of breed is kind of the way to think forward and think progressively.
In the space, we're seeing quite a bit of vendor consolidation, the influx of PE into private equity into this space, and the drive for those new vendors that are amassing a number of integrations or solutions is to broaden their offerings. And MedPro has obviously expanded over the last 35 years in terms of what we're offering today. But I think the core tenets of quality data and solutions to make that data available, whether it's the SaaS-based applications that we've developed internally or integrations with other partners. Fundamentally, we're taking the approach of we are going to be a best-of-breed vendor and not try to be all things to everyone, stay within our swim lanes. And fortunately, we have an amazing ecosystem of partners that we provide complementary or supplemental services that we do not do. For vendors that have a CRM platform and that offer data alongside, time and again we are hearing that this is not their core competency, that this is something that they need to provide as an offering to round out their services, to keep up with the Joneses. But really happy where we are from a partnership perspective, having a pre-built integration onto the Salesforce Life Sciences cloud platform, onto the Veeva Vault platform for those that make that choice for that vendor, along with a whole host of additional vendors that are focused more on the small to mid-size market access verticals that are leaning in on the customer experience that you may not necessarily get with a large company. Organizations like a Synergistics, Close-Up, Pharmigration, Keen 360, Strategy. So a lot of vendors that may not be household names like a Salesforce or a Veeva, but are really distinguishing themselves from a customer experience. And that's where we like to give our customers options and say, regardless of the CRM platform that you choose, there are a number of different options just based on the size and fit of the organization. So I think that's something that customers see us as leaders in terms of integrations and a lot of flexibility. So that's what keeps us going every day.
I can see the look on your face, Scott. The one thing, there's one elephant in the room here that we haven't brought up yet, right? It's AI, right? It's what everybody's talking about, right? And I think from our perspective, the way we look at it, yes, it's new technology. Yes, it can do some amazing things, et cetera. But fundamentally, what AI is doing is potentially exacerbating what folks have been chasing for the longest time, which is data accuracy and compliance around that data. And what we're seeing, or what we already know, I guess, really, as a company that deals very much in the compliance space and has been helping with license validation for so many years, you cannot make this information up, right? You have to keep this data up. Like last year at MedPro here, just to keep up with the Joneses, we used that term before, so I'll use it again, but just to keep up with the Joneses, we did over 4 billion updates to our data just to capture what actually, it was only about 4% of that data actually changed throughout the year. And why are we doing that? Because there is no schedule for when Kentucky is going to update their licenses. There is no schedule for Alabama to release their vets. I mean, I guess maybe they do. I think they do it once a year. But regardless, right, we're having to go and continuously get this information because no matter what you do, whether you look at your CRM as a system of record or a system of action, whether you're using AI or whether you're using a pencil and paper, right, this data has to be there to drive your business. And you can't make it up. So, I think what is very interesting is we're just seeing folks needing more data, right? These products are making it so easy to use so much data. We're actually seeing people try to get more data to try to extract value. And even in the example of that Christine shared of putting that data in SAP, right? I mean, at the last minute, they're realizing, this isn't even AI. This is like order management and shipping products and things like that, right? Like, if you don't have that data at the time you need it, you're creating a compliance risk for your organization.
I just want to double back and using AI speak, making sure that you're not hallucinating. We're talking about 4 billion with a B in terms of data elements that were updated last year.
Yeah, and most of those aren't even changes to the data. It's just the cost of doing business. You have to collect the data that frequently in order to capture the potential for change.
Yeah. There was a recent fireside chat at Reltio's MDM driven conference. And the speaker was a gentleman from Eli Lilly, and they're doing some amazing approaches or changes to the traditional sales rep approach. And and having the direct to consumer angle being made available. And the question to him was, where are they in terms of making their data AI ready? And I think it comes back to, he made a number of salient points, but one takeaway from our angle is that there has to be a fundamental infrastructure or profile to base off of that. And so if you do not have a good baseline, if you're building a house and do not have a solid foundation, then it's really difficult to build a house upon that. And that's where we see value, with our data is providing clear profiles of the practitioners that folks are engaging with, and then leading to some really interesting engagements in a very compliant way.
It's a very relevant point. And yes, AI, of course, has to come up in all of these conversations. But just fundamentally, right, why we exist really is commercial compliance, right? That's the data we care about. It is a challenging road to go down to do that correctly, and we stay in that lane. To Christine's point earlier, we don't want to be all things to all people. And I think the industry does genuinely push back or have shown resistance to getting all in, quote unquote, all in with a singular vendor, because certain things are inevitable, right? Costs can get out of control. Change can become very difficult, so you experience this lock-in in your infrastructure. You are pot committed, right? If we were playing poker, you are all in with this particular vendor, and that's challenging. And we've seen historically, and I'm not saying anything negative about the market players now, but if you do have a closed ecosystem or a limited ecosystem, I will say that because going back to the major players here, we are integrated both bidirectionally into both of them. If you have a very narrow ecosystem, innovation will slow. So let's talk about that for 2 seconds, right? When you own a bigger chunk of an infrastructure, let's talk about innovation potentially slowing, vendor or partner dependability, and the various breakdowns that can happen within an infrastructure.
Well, when we talk about innovation, that can also lead, that AI, of course, falls into that, as well as predictive analytics. And your insights are only as good as the data that you feed it. So like to your point, if you limit your ecosystem, of course, the data is not going to be as refreshed or as good. Your innovation is not going to be the most up to date. But also there's the whole issue with, now we're also seeing, we're seeing changes in CRM. We're also now seeing changes in data governance as well too. So some people are more hesitant to change, hesitant to letting other people or other vendors touch their data, or they might kind of want to just keep everything in-house as well. So there's kind of a line between innovation versus the governance portion of how much you want to grow in those areas.
Yeah, and I look at it as actually, as boring as this is, we're going now data, and I'm going to talk economics for a second, right? Like, I just look at this as like a core like economics issue, right? When you have a more narrow number of vendors or a very narrow scope of service, right? Like, and by narrow in this case, I mean all kind of services bundled together as one, right? You end up with fewer vendors, fewer kind of opportunities for differentiation. And how are these companies trying to drive the bottom line, right? They're all trying to make money. What are they doing? They're trying to come up with cookie cutter ways to implement each one of their customers. They quickly move away from this kind of white glove approach and really understanding the business and trying to drive what is best for a business outcome, and just to try to get the product, the service, the system out the door. So you end up with, rapid innovation up front, but it will stabilize and plateau. You're not going to get that long-term kind of value and opportunity to see new ways of looking at the same problems. So I think that's, it's one of the things that I genuinely worry about, irrespective of the platform that people choose, right? There are only so many system integrators. There is a very short window, ultimately. I know it doesn't feel like it, but 2029 is right around the corner. To get everyone migrated over, like, I'm kind of terrified for what that's going to start to look like for our customers. We'll be there to support them wherever they are, but they're going to need a lot of help.
You think about the two major players and the resources that are available, or either within those organizations or through consultants or system implementers. You have, folks that are certified and trained on Veeva Vault from the MLR perspective, as well as the CRM Vault platform. And then you have, tens of thousands of Salesforce certified resources, and then skilled consultants that have vast experience with implementing Salesforce based platforms. And so that's a fundamental question that every commercial or IT leader needs to ask is, if things go sideways at 2 a.m, are you going to be able to find a resource to be able to help address a challenge? And then the other approach is, are the resources, are the two vendor platforms enabling flexibility in terms of partners, one of which is taking an approach of handling it by themselves in terms of the implementations right now, and others are taking the more open ecosystem approach. And that's going to create bottlenecks, and we've heard from customers in terms of expected timeframes for implementation really being drawn out quite a bit, just based on the limited resources that are available today. So I think this is just it's early innings, and I think we've got a couple years now till companies have to make a choice, and hopefully there's more bandwidth and resources on both platforms. But then again, encouraging folks to think outside the box and think about some of the other smaller players if that's something that fits the needs for the company today and maybe in the future.
All very, very good points. I feel fortunate as we sit here now, right, largely in part of your excellent work, Bryan and Dan, on the technical side, to get our best of breed offering to market our data offering, get it into both platforms, right? Because yes, there is potential for bundled data, right? Veeva has open data, which is largely on the commercial compliance, largely there to move CRM, right? IQVIA clearly is going down this road of looking to monetize analytics, and they're getting more focused on that, right? Both serve their business models, right? And I think MedPro's position has always been, our existence is predicated on, the customer's operational accuracy, right? We exist to avoid latent pain that happens in an industry when data isn't accurate, when a product sits on the warehouse floor and can't move. And I think it's benefited us greatly across the 800 customers. So I feel very fortunate to sit here at that point right now. Another thing that I thought would be relevant to just chat on a little bit, Christine, I'll throw this to you. We have existing customers integrated to both platforms right now. Is there anything recent that you've seen as our data is starting to flow to either, perhaps Dan, this is best for you, either of you, that would be relevant to share with a wider audience?
From my experience, people with this transition that's kind of happening in the decision making, people are also looking for a place to at least temporarily store their data in the meantime while they're making that transition. So we've seen an uptick with things such as Snowflake, for example. A lot of people are now trying to understand that integration, as well as how we can supply that, and then kind of take the next step of where are we going to put that data. So it's kind of like recognizing that we are in this time of transition as well. Dan, I don't know if there's anything else that you've kind of...
Yeah, I would say, and I think the Snowflake is a good one to bring up, right? I mean, data warehousing, being able to have your data in one place to serve the many, many different journeys, use cases, whatever folks call it nowadays, of course, but it is a growing is a growing need, and I think what people are looking for is for that operational data store that, again, can drive their AI models, can drive their CRM interactions, can drive their order management processes, et cetera, et cetera. And that is one of the areas that we get, again, going back to this idea of folks asking for more data, right? They need it now because they're trying to be predictive in what their future needs are going to be. As it relates back to the CRM, I would say that one of the things that's been very consistent, and I think that this will hopefully level off a bit, and Bryan mentioned it earlier, implementation of these CRMs is not turnkey. No matter what anybody says, it's not turnkey. You're moving from one system to another system. There are always some idiosyncrasies. It is not a perfect path in any way, shape, or form. And so we're seeing timelines that right now are often double what the original prediction was, right? And that's kind of common in technology projects, but if that timeline doesn't start to shrink, if there aren't efficiencies driven out of that process, we're just going to see these projects linger and drag on. This is why I used the word terrifying earlier. Usually these things get better, right? But also, your first movers tend to be the folks that have the least complex processes because they're easier to move. So as things get more complicated, I don't know what the future holds, to be honest. But one thing that I am hopeful of is that based on a lot of the discourse in the industry and the pressure between Salesforce and Veeva, right? We are seeing some rapid early innovation. We are seeing pressure to connect the patient journey with the internal process of engaging with practitioners, et cetera. So, there's some hope there, I think, in the short term. There's definitely hope in the long term, right? It's the short term that I think is going to be interesting.
Dan, you and I heard it directly from the first adopters of Life Sciences Cloud at Dreamforce last week. Organizations like Haleon, Takeda, Fresenius, customers we support today, that were the interest in selecting the Life Sciences Cloud platform from Salesforce versus Veeva was to have a seat at the table in defining what that next generation CRM looks like. That was a powerful reason for them to adopt that platform. But we have companies obviously that are moving from the traditional Veeva CRM to Veeva Vault, and the argument for that is very much a consistent experience from the sales rep perspective. Training the reps on a new platform was something that is every commercial leaders need to consider, and I think it's something that companies are faced with in terms of what is their AI philosophy and where the company needs to be in 5 years, or is it a short-term decision to stay on the current platform as the GUI looks very similar to what the reps are experiencing today. And there's other plugins on both platforms that companies have a choice. And the good news is that MedPro supports both of those platforms as well as every other CRM out there. So there's a lot of choices.
Such an interesting point. So let's take that a step further. As a life science leader now, when I'm looking at a transition, I'm essentially being forced to make a transition, whether it's same vendor, new platform, or this entirely new platform, although architecturally what the old platform was built on, right? Is the choice I'm going to go gamble on Veeva, who likely, I think we can confirm this, has a significant head start on traditional life sciences workflows embedded. It's going to be, although the GUI might look a little different or the UI is a little different, it's going to have a natural look and feel to field-based or revenue-generating folks. Although with that, I could get a more narrow ecosystem, right, and deal with the limited SIs and application intelligence on board in my own company so we can maintain some level of nimble or not vendor dependent. Or am I gambling on Salesforce, who has always had a very diverse vertical approach to their CRM platform, was prohibited really from going directly into, I'll call, say, pharma of the life sciences side, but has a good track record of over time developing incredible workflows. Is that really fundamentally what they have to be sitting with at the foundation of all of this?
I think as a leader, longer term, yes, that's kind of what you're thinking about. I think shorter term, what you're really just thinking about is, what is my path of least resistance? Because I'm going to have to move, right? How many eggs do I have in which baskets? Most of the organizations we work with have some flavor of Salesforce, even if they're using Veeva, right? Whether it's for patient programs or whatever. And so, it really is just kind of a question of, how quickly are these organizations, big players, plenty of money, how quickly are they going to reach feature parity, right? I mean, that's really what they're racing toward, right? Veeva is a little bit later to the game and really pushing AI, but they're kind of catching up there. Salesforce needed to work on their offline capabilities and app capabilities and whatnot, and just recently released their first version of it. They're also a little bit behind on things like events management that they announced will be out next year.
First half next year.
So, they're just kind of going back and forth, and ultimately, at least sounding like they're building similar mousetraps, right? So I think I always like to look at it from a much more practical basis. That's why I take things back to like economics and stuff like that, right? It's just, it really is, two sides of a very similar coin. Now, again, of course, Veeva is going to go in and they're going to sell data. They're going to sell all of these other things. I think the thing that we want to make sure folks are aware is that there are plenty of choices out there, right? There are plenty of choices. You do not have to go all in with any of these. And I would strongly consider, as a leader, making sure that I'm hedging appropriately, right? If I want to go all in on a CRM, I don't think I want to go all in on data and CRM, right? Because I want to be able to make sure that it's easy for me to get that data out of my CRM to other systems, to other processes.
I was just going to say that I think it depends on the use case, implementation, the business functions. How agile do you want to be, or do you need to be? Because as Dan mentioned, people kind of go for what's kind of fixes the short-term resolution, or what brings the solution first. So those are some things to consider too, but I would also encourage people to consider if the siloed approach for CRMs is the way that you want to go. Siloed usually has a negative connotation towards it, but again, that also depends on the business function, whether you want to start to spread your data or your needs into different areas as well, or if you're just trying to fix a specific, adjust a specific opportunity instead.
As Dan said, everyone's being forced to make this decision, and it's an opportunity to reflect on what the company needs are today and what are the other options. And maybe a lot of folks maybe have gone autopilot based on maybe the herd mentality within this space of going with one particular vendor or the other. But you think about, going back to the house concept, building or renovation, if you're redoing a kitchen, there's different brands for the sink versus your range versus your fridge, right? And I'm sure that there are vendors that would like you to buy each appliance directly from them, but each of them have a specific function that you're looking for, and as long as they all play nice with one another, then you're going to have a harmonious kitchen, which is going to be, a happy life, and so those are really important things. I think I think a commercial leader, IT leaders, role today is to just take a beat, look at different options that are available. What are, if any, limitations if choosing one particular platform, and then going with a best of breed approach of choosing the platform is critical, and then choosing the right data provider, choosing the right content management, your MLR vendor. Think about different alternatives for HCP engagement, and as long as all those vendors play nice in the sandbox together, which most do, then it's going to be a much better experience than this attractive one vendor for all particular services that may not necessarily be particularly strong in one area, and you're forced to deal with middle of the road service and data.
It's such a great point, and we've talked at length. The three of us have at length about this, right? You've chosen convenience over quality, right? When you're doing that, and I understand the appeal, right? Even in my personal life, hey, I have this one particular vendor, and they're going to handle these 3 or 4 things, but it's always problematic, right? Why not specialize, spend the extra time, do proper due diligence and vetting on the right vendor for the right task, and institute them? And it goes beyond CRM. And maybe this is for another discussion, but with MDM platforms, it's always fact. With 800 customers, we are very, very, very fortunate to get a diverse number of inputs right into it. We see it all. That's a great way to say it. We do get to see it all, and I'm always surprised, continually surprised, anytime I hear about someone on the MDM side who made this rocket ship-like investment into a technology that is able to consume dozens of data sources and then make the most sense of it and then deliver it to downstream systems. And yet they implement that product and they choose a singular data source or from a singular vendor. What is the purpose of buying this rocket ship? So I think, Bryan, your point is very on point and applies to not just CRM, but rather other data delivery mechanisms within the infrastructure.
If I can just kind of throw a question out there. I know that we're in that period of everyone has to kind of make a decision, and I usually take more time to make decisions. I go through a big vetting process, whether it be personal or business related, but what is the benefit of making a decision nearer or sooner rather than later? Because some people might be holding on to the decision, waiting to see what other shiny things come out from each end. So what would be the benefit or caveat even of making a decision now versus later?
Yeah, I mean, one of them that we're hearing from customers is the economics, right? Is that the companies have a choice, and
product economics again.
That's right. I think both major CRMs and the other CRM players out there are. It's an opportunity to have additional life science logos associated with their brand, and so companies are having a true choice. And we've known, in terms of looking at competing offers or proposals for CRM platform, it is I think probably the most aggressive we've seen in terms of licensing fees, because it's a foot race in terms of the logos that are out there, and again, you can play it out, and you've got a little less than 4 years to make a decision, or as the vendors are looking to showcase additional life science vendors that have chosen their platform. That's something that we have customers that are sharing their competitive offers that are coming in from the different platforms.
Purely speculative on my part, and I know that's probably not the greatest thing to do, but again, my opinion is there are a number of companies that have selected Salesforce already that we haven't heard about, and there are a number of companies that decided to go to Veeva Vault that we don't hear about. However, to Bryan's point, from a household name, right, the big companies, those are the ones that are going to make the headline. I anticipate there was some grace or favorable terms offered to them to be an early adopter, if you will.
100%. And they're also putting in the time to help build out the platform, define features, capabilities, and things like that too. We know that's happening. It always happens in the industry. That's what helps really drive the innovation. And I think that's really important. But I want to pull back one thread as we sort of get to the end of this conversation that I thought was really interesting. And it came up when I listened to Haleon speak at Dreamforce. They were talking about some of their services. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Haleon, their primary business is actually over-the-counter products, right? And one of the things that drove their early adoption, it had to do with economics, but it wasn't like supply side, it was demand side, that what they're seeing, what they firmly believe and what they've demonstrated, and we've even heard about this working with them on data and such, is that they see these platforms as an opportunity to squeeze more value out of the products that they have, both in terms of how they're marketing to folks and in terms of capturing market share. I'm confident that very smart people in some of these private equity organizations will not see this as well, that whether it's through the CRM or through the products and services that these companies are providing, there's additional value to be had out there. And the platform you're using for your customer and patient engagement is going to be a key channel to get that, right? And again, you're also going to need to make sure that you have confidence in the data that's driving those decisions, or you're not going to get the value.
Yeah, they do work so cohesively together, you can't separate the two.
Yeah.
Right? These platforms are building on giving territory managers, account managers, whatever that internal nomenclature is, all of the information at a glance that they need to go and have an interaction. But if the fundamental things, the things that we decided to focus on and staying in our lane, that commercial compliance piece is off, you are prohibited from having that interaction and going further with that conversation.
It's incredible with some of the AI technologies and whatnot. They're taking some of that compliance and pushing it even further. Like they're letting the AI companions, agents that are sitting alongside the apps that your sales folks are using, really almost riding along like a compliance person in the car with you, checking your call notes and verifying what your interactions are saying and what information you're using and sharing and going above and beyond just, hey, this is our approved content. What did you say about that approved content? It's really quite incredible, because what that does is it lowers the cost of compliance for folks as well, which it helps with the other side of the equation, right? How much money is going out the door to earn the next patient that you can help.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. There's two sides to that coin. There's revenue generation and revenue protection, right? Compliance is certainly, good compliance programs are revenue protective.
I think just leveraging the AI and thinking about the traditional demographic for life science sales reps, and we saw, Dan, at Dreamforce the preview, I think, for their February 26th release of incorporating stories for the reps in terms of the recap of their previous week and the plans, their planned engagements with healthcare providers in the coming week, as well as having it in an audio podcast form so that the rep is driving to their first appointment on Monday morning and just thinking about the game plan for going in. So hopefully we get a little bit of that podcast market share with this initial episode, and alongside their planning for the week. So I think that's a really good, safe use of AI in terms of, as opposed to maybe some other approaches that some folks are considering. So really exciting stuff coming down the pipe.
It's great. I think overall this dialogue allowed me to sit here, and I appreciate all of your insights, to think about half a dozen other topics that this group or maybe a slightly shuffled group could talk about moving forward. So I think this is a good place to pause or to stop for today, and appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was a great discussion and a relevant one for where the industry is headed. The CRM landscape is evolving fast, but one message keeps coming through. Best of breed still matters. When organizations stay focused on data quality and build partnerships and integrations that complement their systems, They don't just keep up, they lead. A big thanks to Bryan, Dan, and Christine for sharing their insights, and to you for tuning in. For more information on how MedPro data is the better choice, please visit us at medprosystems.com.